What was the most fucked up thing you saw in school? Our school bully nasty piece of work we'll call C ripped the wig off a new student, A, who had recently returned from cancer treatment. They got into it and A was suspended despite multiple witnesses. We suspect even the teachers were slightly scared of C. Next day as we were leaving, A was waiting outside for the doors to open, comes straight in, grabs C's hair, slams her head into a locker, then proceeds to pull out a huge pair of scissors and violently chops off as much hair as she can before the teachers intervene. She was obviously expelled, but man, she's still my hero. Bully C was definitely put in her place after that and absolutely toned down her torment of everyone else. Wish I knew what became of A. Savage. In a way, it's the bully's fault. Yes, and the school's fault for not doing shit. Oh yeah, it was absolutely the bully's fault and she got what she deserved. This was the early 90s, so back when the teachers turned a blind eye to bullies, the day whole kids will be kids shit. Not sure it's any better today though. No, now it's the zero tolerance policy. Get punched? Oh well. Sit there and take it or get the same punishment as the bully. It's really bad. My friend got suspended for punching a kid after he stabbed him with a pair of fucking scissors. What the fucking fuck? Ye jabbed them deep into his thigh. No, zero tolerance is even more bullshit. It's sit there and get the same punishment as the bully. Might as well get in a few good swings. Read a story on here where some kid got suspended for a few days for fighting, the same as the other kid. He didn't even throw a single punch, just dodged. He got hit a few times. Kid's dad knew it wouldn't stop and told his son, you'll get the same punishment either way. If he starts it again, fight back. If you win, we'll get ice cream. I worked at an American school in China a while back. One day, one of the school buses was on the way to campus from the city and there was an accident that students saw. A truck ran over a man riding his bicycle. The students on the bus witnessed the accident and watched as the man lay dying on the road. They were stuck in traffic and couldn't get away from the horrific scene for over 20 minutes. Kids were crying and traumatized. Most of them were elementary school students. There was a lot of grief counseling in the months after that. Watched two girls get into a fight. One girl had a bunch of ear piercings and was wearing so many hoops it looked like chainmail. The other girl got her on the ground, grabbed those hoops and pulled hard. I will never forget the scream. The rings didn't give, but her ear sure as hell did. Blood everywhere. The girl standing over her like a goddamn psychopath holding a very recognizable ear in the air above her head. It was fucking Mortal Kombat in real life. Her ear actually came off. Like almost entirely. There might have been a nub left, but there was enough of it held high that if someone hadn't seen it happen and just walked by, they would definitely know it to be an ear. What happened to the girl? As far as I know, neither of them came back to school. Word around on Van Gogh was that they tried to reattach it, but it wasn't good. Sub-Zero ended up in juvie. Van Gogh vs Sub-Zero Round 2. I would easily pay $100 for that PPV. Sub-Zero's final words as she stood over her conquered opponent were, "You weak, pathetic fool, I've come for your lobes." Saw assistant principal making out with a freshman in the hallway. Dude had to be like 55-60 years old. That's one old freshman. It's always the vulnerable kids, too. The ones with shit homes, boundary issues, who have been deprived of affection, and that assistant principal fucking knew it. He'd been around long enough to spot him from a mile away. It was during class hours so the halls were empty. Can't remember why exactly I was out roaming the halls, but when I saw it I couldn't ducking believe my eyes. And are 100% right about the vulnerability part. The boys in my class bred mold in one of the lockers. They managed to get milk so moldy, some yellow fluid was all around it. I did that but to a much milder degree a few years ago in 6th grade. Put a carton of grape juice and left it there for a couple months, and when I checked on it there was some black mold or whatever. They had bread in there for a whole year. You could smell the mold everywhere near the lockers. In 1st grade a boy pulled his pants and underwear to below his knees and laid down on his back. Then a girl spat on him. I don't remember why, but I will never forget that sight. 2 fetishes were born on that day. Some kid kept shitting in the sink every week and they had to keep cleaning it up. One day I walked in the bathroom and someone had put shit on the wall. Had some girls in my high school who were creating works of art in the same fashion. They were deemed the fecal phantoms and were never caught. We had the notorious shit swastika smeared on the walls of a stall one day. Never found out who did it. A couple fucking in the dumpster behind the cafeteria. For the rest of the year, people would walk up behind the dude crinkling paper and asking if it was getting him hard. Why didn't they just do it next to the dumpster? Like physically in the dumpster or just behind it in some sort of enclosure? Inside the dumpster. Where the trash belongs. My school had this thing called intervention. It was like study hall, but only around 25 minutes long, and it was designed to help out kids who needed help finishing work. Though let's be honest, it was just a short study hall meant to fill up the school day, and it was always right after lunch. We had to wait outside the classrooms for the teachers to get back from their lunch breaks, so sometimes they came quick, before or right after we got there, but other times they came late. One time my teacher came 15 minutes late, and they never came at the same time, so it was awkward, being alone in the hallway while everyone else was in class. It was 8th grade, and a rather bad day for teachers. They were all late. We were all waiting outside the classrooms, and the hall was packed with 14-year-olds. Inevitably, a fight broke out between two kids. One of them was named Joe, and the other was named Luke, I think. I could be wrong on Luke. Joe was a huge prick who was in most of my classes, and Luke was a 7th grader that was also somewhat of a prick. There were punches and pushes thrown, but it was really had to hear it because of all the kids. In fact, I didn't even know what was going on until I heard a scream. In the hallway, there was a metal box on the wall that held the fire extinguisher. Joe had pushed Luke into it, and Luke hit the back on his head on the metal corner of it. Luke let out this blood-curdling scream, holding onto the back of his neck, crying and shouting. My head, everyone backed away from them, and there I saw Joe standing still, looking horrified, and Luke, on his knees with a trail of blood running down the back of his neck and ear. It was my first time seeing so much blood that wasn't my own or on the internet, and it really startled us all. A janitor saw it, and unlocked all the classroom doors with his keys, and ordered us to get into class, which we did, while he took Luke to the nurse. Our teachers eventually came, but they couldn't let class out. The reason being, blood had gotten on the carpet of the hall, and that was a health hazard. After around 45 minutes, the janitor was unable to get the blood out, so he just put a trash can over it and told nobody to move or touch it. The day went on as usual. Around a week later we found out that Luke had to get 5 stitches in the nape of his neck, and his parents chose to pull him out of our school. Joe was also suspended for the fight, but apparently Luke's parents threatened legal action, so that suspension turned into an explosion rather quickly. Rubber padding was put around the fire extinguisher box so it wouldn't happen again, and to this day I don't know if the blood ever got out of the carpet. TLDR, 2 boys fought in the hall and it ended with one of them needing stitches after bleeding heavily, and the other being expelled, in front of the whole grade. Janitor deserved a raise after that. I can just picture the janitor mumbling, "I don't get paid enough for this shit." A girl was coming back from a doctor's appointment and wasn't there to hear that we couldn't get out equipment for recess. She opened the door, grabbed something and went to leave. The wind kicked up and slammed the door on her hand and she lost a finger. They rushed her to the hospital and they sewed it back on and eventually it was back to normal, but that was the most fucked up thing I had seen. Straight out of a horror movie, I'm telling you. A girl with bulimia tried to shout down a spiral staircase, but because her gag reflex was so weak she vomited from a great height instead. Oh, the splash. Death from above. The entire science block nearly collapsing. The buildings in my secondary school were really old. They were built in the 50s and were only supposed to last 30 years at most, but they were still in use 60 years down the line because my school are cheapskates. Not to mention they didn't bother doing safety checks because who does that, am I right? Anyway, they got somebody in to put in new windows in the science block and this bloke found out the entire science block was about to collapse, and if they hadn't brought him in a lot of people could have died. They ended up fencing off the entire science block as well as about half the school, and put up scaffolding and columns to hold the ceiling up all over the rest of the school. All very distracting when I was trying to do my GCSEs. This wasn't the only thing that nearly fucked over my entire year group's GCSEs either. They ended up demolishing the entire building the year after I left too. Oh, and before I'd even started there were 2 separate incidents of arson destroying sizable parts of the building and the stripper incident. My school was a fucking tip honestly. Question: what was the stripper incident? You can't lead with structural instability of a building and finish with stripper incident and not give details.